Is Labour going to bring over foreign builders to build homes for foreign people to live in? Today, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner proudly boasted that Labour's going to spend £2 billion building new social housing. But who is going to build those homes? I bet it's foreign construction workers. And where are they going to live? And who is going to live in these brand new social houses? I bet it's foreign nationals and asylum seekers. Foreign-born people occupy 48% of London's social housing. A leaked document from the Office for Value for Money revealed new houses would mean, get this, fewer asylum seekers are put up in hotels. Right, so they're going to put asylum seekers in them, are they? Where are they building these new 1.5 million new homes? Well, many will be built on the Green Belt, the British countryside. So I think it's fair to say we can get ready for a lot more of this.
Standing at the site of the first masjid in the Lake District. Muslims have actually lived and worked in this area for over 40 years, but we still have no masjid, no madrasa and no janaza facilities in a 50-mile radius.
Just to be clear, at the last census, there were roughly 11 Muslims in that area. But anyway, there we go. And if you don't believe me, just take a look at this.
Are 40% above the number of migrants crossing from France now than we were at the same point last year. So at this point last year, 4,300 migrants had made that illegal journey from France. This year already, we're over 6,000.
Channel crossings up 40%, 6,000 illegals so far this year. And you will not believe this. Do you remember the Bibby Stockholm barge? The one that Labour said was a human rights abomination?
I want to get the Conservatives' backlog right down so that we don't need to use any of the barges. The barges are incredibly expensive. No, you obviously can't do that on day one. But you have to use the barges.
Do you know how many people are on the Bibby Stockholm?
I don't have the figures. I wish James had updated us. I think we need to end these extortionate barges, bases and also hotels. We want to do that as fast as possible.
Look, they'd said stuff like the Bibby Stockholm was inhumane. You couldn't have people possibly living on there. It would be against their human rights. Well, now Labour have said they're going to keep using migrant hotels for the foreseeable future, and they've given the contract to managing some of those hotels to the company that was running the Bibby Stockholm barge. Absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? And a Labour MP finally broke ranks today and said that all foreign criminals should be deported. But unfortunately for the Labour MP, Mr Bash, Labour scrapped the Tory policy of saying that anyone who arrived illegally was basically a criminal and could never claim asylum. So now, under Labour, they're just poor refugees and they can claim. Appeals, they're up 500%. Why? Because we now have an Attorney-General who promised that we will never deviate from the ECHR.
Now, I'm proud to say that since taking office, this new United Kingdom government has taken steps to uphold our obligations and the international rules-based system. The new United Kingdom government will never withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights or refuse to comply with judgments of the court.
Today, the Labour Party, in light of all the information that I've just given you, in light of how urgently people feel the utter crisis of illegal and legal immigration is, despite how annoyed, angry, upset, worried and concerned the British public is that their town or their village is about to be turned into some kind of third world dumping ground, today the Labour Party briefed out this line on illegal immigration. The best deterrence is preventing people from making the life-threatening journey in the first place. What a load of guff. What a pointless, meaningless word salad. This has been going on for years. They have absolutely no solution, do they? Tomorrow, Rachel Reeves is probably going to stand up in the Commons and announce £2 billion for social housing. And the Labour MPs behind her are going to cheer, yay, yay, £2 billion for social housing, yay. What they're cheering for is £2 billion for new houses built by foreigners for foreigners. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got GB News presenter Alex Armstrong, columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow, and journalist Jonathan Liss. Alex, I'll start with you on this. So, homes by foreigners for foreigners in Labour's Britain, essentially.
Yeah, well, is anyone surprised? You know, I don't think anyone is, really. I think we all knew this was coming. They got rid of one of Angela Rayner's first acts was to scrap one of Rishi Sunak's key policies, which was going to be British homes for British people first, which is how it should be. If you're a British citizen of this country, you should get priority housing. I don't think that's controversial. I don't think that's left or right wing. That is just the way it should be in Britain. Unfortunately, now we're going to find more of our tax money going to these new programmes, when actually, you know, quite frankly, we know that where they're going to go is to foreigners who have not contributed, their families haven't contributed to our economy, they haven't contributed to our society, and they're probably not going to assimilate. So young lads like me who've come from London, who come from poor families, who still can't get on the housing ladder, are going to be paying more taxes to help other people who have come to this country potentially illegally before I'm even given the opportunity to get on the housing system.
It doesn't really seem fair, Esther.
Well, I mean, I can't even believe we're having a conversation about this because, you know, in other countries, you're never going to see a conversation about who should benefit from the country's
exactly.
System. However, I think, you know, the statistic that you quoted about 40% of housing goes to people that are not British born. I think that's the reason for that statistic is because many of them end up having children here. So their children are technically British citizens, but they're not. So the heads of the household tend to be immigrants, but they have children here. And also, almost a fifth of the English population lives in social housing. That's the real issue here. The point is not to get people living on social housing or building loads of social housing so people can live in it. The point is to get people to be able to buy their own houses to actually grow the economy. And that obviously the people that should be first in the queue, the only people in the queue really should be British people. In Canada, for example, you have a situation where you have loads of Chinese oligarchs, Russian oligarchs buying up all the property. Local Canadians can't actually afford the properties there. And that's the same thing that's happening here.
That is a really important issue, but the thing about social housing is it's based on need, right? So they'll argue that asylum seekers and refugees are in desperate need for housing. And actually, someone like me who's actually paid tax since I was, you know, as early as I could work, which was 16 years old in this country, I won't even be considered, right? That's the reality.
Jonathan, this could be Labour's biggest ever betrayal.
There's no evidence that asylum seekers are jumping the queue at all over British people. And the evidence, the statistic about foreign-born people, Boris Johnson would fall under that category.
No, he wouldn't, because he wouldn't be in social housing.
He's foreign-born.
He wouldn't be in social housing.
He's foreign-born.
It's social housing.
You're talking about foreigners, Patrick.
You're talking
about foreigners, and the statistic is people who weren't born here. A lot of people.
Social housing.
Fine. A lot of. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you can become a British citizen, and plenty of people who are not
British.
Yes, it does. No, Legally, it does.
Yes, but not actually.
Legally, it does. And
reality.
Also, and people who are not British citizens, by the way, are working. Immigrants who are predominantly working age are paying tax into the system a lot more than a lot of British people. You talk about sort of people on welfare, for example. A lot of those people are the British people that you are talking about, or pensioners or whatever. So, you know, if you're talking about, are we talking about people who are paying into the system and taking it out, or what are we talking about? It doesn't bother me where people are born.
Do you know how much you need to make to be a net contributor to this country, as in so you don't get more from the state than you do get? £62,000. Now, the government recently, this was James Cleverly, who faced a lot of heat for this, had to actually increase the threshold to which immigrants have to be paid before they can be sponsored in this country to £29,000. He tried to increase it to £37,000, which even at that level, they still wouldn't be net contributors to a net taxpayer. So this idea that, you know, they're coming here, they're working, they're paying their taxes. If you're not earning £62,000 or more, you are not. You are getting more from the state than you're giving.
There is a. I think
just on a technicality.
Can I say, I think something is going to happen in Britain over the course. If, by the way, Labour even managed to build this number of houses, which I'm deeply sceptical of, but let's just assume they do, and let's assume that they get a second term and they do therefore build even more. I know, but then they build even more houses, OK? They're going to have to build a lot of these in relatively rural areas. And we're going to see people who have chosen...
Without the transport infrastructure,
without any of that. And unfortunately, the stats show that where there is an influx of people, especially when it comes to asylum seekers and illegal immigrants, as well as low-level economic migrants, unfortunately, there is an increase in crime, both violent and sexual. And people in rural areas of the country are going to see their culture change, their town or village change, and they're going to see more crime. And it's going to kick off.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, this is what some of us have been saying for a really, really long time. I've come from a part of London where that has happened, hence the reason why I'm so vocal about it not happening to the rest of our country. Parts of London are a warning sign to Britain. Wake up. You know, it might not be on your doorstep, and it might be easy for you to vote Lib Dem and vote for parties that aren't going to, you know, solve these crises or don't want to solve these crises. But the reality is, it's going to come for you next, because we cannot sustain our population growth. We cannot sustain it in London. Therefore, we have to build them everywhere else.
So much fear-mongering, Alex. Come on.
Well, it's not, but it's true. I've seen it happen in my own town.
What happened in your town?
Well, crime is up, immigration's too high, there's not enough housing being built, the hospitals are overflowing, the schools are overflowing, there are cabins that were temporary when I was at school there.
It's all good otherwise. It's poverty that drives crime, not immigration.
But lack of resources drives poverty, and you cannot say all these people being forced into an area is going to make anyone richer. Everyone's being
scaremongering. Having this conversation on the scarcity of resources and immigration that's too high for well over 2 decades, consistently the British people have voted trying to address this issue. I think one of the reasons why people get frustrated, especially with the left in this country, is this idea that, oh, it's just fear-mongering. Oh, actually, what you're seeing on your doorstep is you're blind. The emperor's actually wearing loads of clothes. You're not seeing. You're trying to get a place for your child for a child in your local school is not actually imagination, right? It's just not happening, right? And this is why people get really resentful, because actually the British population, so ethnic British people, which I know you can't say because the British people, like the English people, are actually an ethnicity. The population has been relatively stable since basically the dawn of time. What you're seeing now is an influx of people from various parts of the world, and that's where the tensions are created. It's not
as to we're all the product of immigration. You are the product of immigration. I'm the product of immigration.
That's why I'm speaking on facts. Do you think that Britain is an outlier? So do you think if something like this happened in China or India or Jamaica or whatever, the local population
they have entirely different histories.
Blind? No, I'm saying the English population has.
And India did actually have Jamaica did have rather unwelcome immigration.
For the last 350 years,
from this
there hasn't
country.
been a mass immigration of English people from the rest of the world. They've actually been on this island for a very long time. So this idea that they don't know what they're talking about, they don't realise the community is changing, is ridiculous.
Jonathan, can you understand why people are concerned, especially in some rural, quintessentially English parts of England, that there might be now housing developments there, and the people are going to... With the social housing in those areas is going to be, as Alex was saying, based on need. And we are seeing big influxes of people from, say, Somalia or Sudan, etc. We accepted 93% of all applicants from Sudan in 2023. Some of those are going to be classed as incredibly vulnerable and needy under our asylum system.
No, we're getting all the surgeons.
Patrick, you know perfectly well the planning laws are not going to allow... So the quintessentially English villages, as you say, the village green is not going to become a mosque. It's not going to become Little Mogadishu. We are perfectly able to absorb. We are perfectly able to absorb migration in a sustainable way that preserves communities. We have been we've had been for decades. We will be.
Are you asking us to not believe our own eyes?
Yeah, we're just imagining it.
I don't know what your eyes are telling you. My eyes are telling me something different.
I took my mother to Barnet A&E, and we spent over 10 hours there. I hardly heard English, for one thing. We spent over 10 hours there. She was facing, obviously she was in A&E, so she was facing quite a medical crisis. And the actual, just the complete change from this hospital that's been my local hospital for well over a decade was actually shocking to me. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get my mother the help she needs? This is all in my imagination. I haven't witnessed this change in the last 15 years of my life. I'm just fear-mongering. And my mother didn't actually spend 10 hours in A&E, not getting help, with too many people there, with not enough resources, with barely anyone speaking English. This is just in my imagination.
You know what it is, Esther?
To Luton Hospital, it's just in your imagination if you didn't get help for 10 hours to get a bloody blood test.
You know, and I think the issue is that British people want to see their money spent on their sheer lack of resources first. They want to see their hospitals improve, they want to see their services improve, and yet we're saying actually we're going to build more homes because we need to increase the population. And the reason why they want to increase the population is to continue the GDP trend that is based on complete rubbish, because we all know GDP goes down per capita, but that's why they want to do it. It's a competition to who can import the most migrants.